d4. Nihal brings his knight out to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, and d5. We have the queen's gambit declined and Magnus goes for the Catalan. Nihal pauses a bit. He's like, what should I do? Should I take the pawn, go into the open Catalan here, give a check with bishop b4, play bishop e7, many options. He goes for the check. Knight comes out. Ooh, this is slightly unusual than bishop d2. That's the more common move. Bishop g2 played. And Nihal goes for this b6 line, which is supposed to be very good because black is essentially telling white that your knight on d2 is slightly misplaced. It should have been on c3. Bishop b2, all normal developing moves happening here, and Nihal has to decide about his bishop. Should he get it back? I don't think you want to trade ever. He goes rook e8, making a space for the bishop to go back to f8. Rook comes to c1. This file will open up later on, so the rook stands pretty well here. The time on the clock, Magnus has 3 minutes 2 seconds with what he began. It's the same. Nihal has spent around 30 seconds on the clock. So he's a little bit confused here. You don't want to play c5 because with a3 you may have to give up the bishop, which would be kind of trapped on the other side of the board. So maybe you want to get it back to f8. Nihal does it. He brings his bishop back to f8. He has 2 minutes 9 seconds, and now it's time for Magnus to take a decision. There is an idea with knight jumping into e5, looking at these soft squares. The other idea is to just push pawn to e3. Simple move. The main idea, of course, is to take the pawn, opening up the rook. These are the possibilities. Magnus also thinking here for 20 seconds. He takes the pawn on d5. Pawn takes makes so much sense, opening up the rook. But Nihal takes it with the bishop. Wow, that's a slightly bold decision there. It doesn't change the evaluation much, but I think what black now doesn't have is a center. And white can push e4. However, right now the square is well controlled. And black wants to strike in the center with c5. Magnus goes rook e1. He wants to play e4. Nihal can actually physically stop it with knight e4. But he goes c5. He lets Magnus play e4. And Nihal is like, you can't push forward, Magnus. What's your plan? Magnus pushes forward with the other pawn. Knight jumps into the center. Is this pawn on e5 going to be a strength or a weakness? Only time will tell. Because these pawns are going to get traded. I love Magnus's next move, knight e4. He wants to look at the d6 square, although for now, it's very well controlled. With pawn on e5, often you have attacking possibilities on the king side as well. Pawn takes pawn will be met with queen takes. He goes rook c8. That's a good move, bringing the rook into the game. And now, an important moment for Magnus. 2 minutes, 8 seconds on the clock. He should think here, how is he going to make progress? It's a position where black is doing really okay, but white has more space, and all depends on the next few moves. And Magnus is a genius in such positions. Can he show his class here? There's one idea, which is knight d2, knight c4, which the engine loves, and Magnus finds it. Wow! Magnus Carlsen, you can bank on him to find an amazing positional maneuver wherever it exists. Beautiful. And now Nihal is of course tensed. If a knight comes here, forking both the rooks, that would be just very, very difficult to deal. So he stops the knight. Now Magnus jumps in with knight d6. He's ready to double his pawns. Now this pawn could become a weakness. Why not attack it here? Queen b6, I can attack it. However, Magnus has seen that in this way, rook c5, queen c5, knight jumping in, it will defend and attack. So Nihal goes c4. He's giving up a pawn. Wow, Magnus takes it. He's like, thank you, Nihal. Why did you give me a pawn? He's trying to think here, Magnus, because he can take with the rook, he can take with the knight. There are two possibilities. But what Nihal essentially is saying is, hey, I've doubled your pawns. My knight has now a stable square. It's actually a very deep positional decision by Nihal. Knight b6 played. If he manages to win this pawn, black will be just better. But Magnus, move by move, he's like saying to Nihal, you can't take the pawn now. Your bishop is hanging. So, solve that problem first. Nihal Sarin, of course, will solve it. By the way, the time has almost equalized here, which is great news for Nihal Sarin. The position hasn't. Bishop a6. Again, the pawn is hanging next. What does Magnus do? Bishop a3 defends the pawn with his bishop. And the thing is, the bishop will settle down on the c5 square. It's an excellent bishop there. And now Nihal has to find his next move. It seems very difficult to play here as black, although you have these beautiful knights which cannot be dislodged. But what are they doing? It's a game of patience now. Nihal goes queen d7, he waits. Magnus puts his bishop on c5, pawn to h6. Nihal is like, okay Magnus, make some progress. Magnus says, I don't know, I'm also waiting. h3, improving the position. Rook d8, Nihal waits. Waiting game. Dudum, 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 dudum. Queen d2, he brings his queen up, connects the rooks. Queen a4. The queen is now looking at the a2 pawn, also putting a bit of pressure on a5. Magnus goes bishop e4. I love this move. The bishop is looking in this direction. Who knows, a kingside attack may come in. The knight attacks the bishop. Do you want to put the bishop on this diagonal, like bring it back here? It doesn't feel right. Somehow you want to keep your bishop here. I think bishop f3 with the idea of king g2, later h4, h5. These are common ideas, and in such positions Magnus is the boss. He has 53 seconds, Nihal has 38. He brings his bishop back to f3. Classy. Knight comes back. Nihal is like, okay Magnus, what's next? How do you make progress here? And this is very tough actually for both sides, because both sides have their pieces beautifully organized. Somehow a pawn break is very tough. g4, g5 looks really difficult. He brings king g2. This is the plan we were talking about. Sometimes when you don't have moves, just improve your position bit by bit. Again Nihal is asked the question. 28 seconds, 27, 26, 25. Nihal, let's go. He goes back with the queen. Queen d7, again waiting. And Magnus now, does he double the rooks? Rook c2, rook c1 seems like a good plan, by the way. You can double the rooks there. But Magnus also not able to find moves. h4, yes, that's a good move. Trying for h5. Bishop b5 played, improving the position once again. Tough position here. Bishop b5. Nihal ahead on the clock now. Magnus down to 18 seconds. He brings the bishop back. Maybe he wants to trade rooks. That could be some progress there. Or maybe he wants rook c5 followed by the other rook coming to c1. That could be the idea. But Nihal now down to 10 seconds. Oh my goodness, Nihal, make a move. Oh wow, this is so much pressure here. Knight c4, finally some trades. Magnus is happy because Nihal is the one who has blinked. Although Nihal's trade was pretty good for him. Rook c2 played. And now maybe do you want to go knight b6 with the idea of trading the bishops here with bishop d5. He's placed the knight on the other side. Good move. Rook c1. He trades. Takes on d5. Must take with the knight. Nihal makes a mistake. He takes on c2. He lets Magnus get control of the c file. This is exactly what Magnus needed. That was actually a very small error. And now bishop c5 attacking the pawn on a7. Magnus, all that he needs is one mistake. Again, the rook comes in to attack here. Knight jumps back. And now what do? Magnus a4. The pawn is kicking the knight away. If knight c8, rook c6. So he goes ahead. And now the king comes in. Even Magnus doesn't even take the pawn here. He's like, I'm going to be calm, cool, collected. Pushes the pawn to d5. Nihal is saying to Magnus, your double pawns are not going anywhere. My f5, e5 pawns could become dangerous. Magnus snatches the pawn. Takes, bishop takes. Knight takes the a5 pawn. d7, making a queen. If king e7 queens. That was the trick. He comes back. What a move. Bishop c5, cutting the king off. If you take I queen, g6 played. King e3. Now bringing the king over. The king is actually going to run like boom, 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 boom. He goes bishop f8. Magnus, king comes back by Nihal. The bishop now kind of dominates the knight. King comes up. Nihal is once again telling Magnus, can you break through? But this time, I'm sure Magnus has a way. Pawn takes pawn and brings the king in. Ooh, the king is coming in. Magnus knows that he's winning. But Nihal comes back. He takes away this square from the king. King is coming from c7. Pawn takes, king c7. And the knight moves away. Do you queen? Is it winning? Magnus says, maybe it is. I don't want any risks. I have 10 seconds. He comes back, bishop d2, attacking the pawn here. King moves forward. And now d6. You can't take with the knight. I'm just queening here. So he pushes the pawn. Nihal is like, can I hold this? The double pawns here. Because if you make a queen, I'll take. And then I'll take this pawn. But Magnus, of course, defends the pawn first. Now threatening to queen. Nihal resigns.